So what I'm gonna talk about is the introduction of a dynamic filler. But to understand the use of dynamic fillers on the face, we have to be very familiar with the dynamics of the face rather than the fillers. So I'm gonna start the presentation with the recent paper by Dr. Ting Song Lim from Malaysia, and his article is describing the massive uses of fat or fillers on the face. Actually, he called this problem as a facial overfilled syndrome. And what is that? We all know that there's too much injection, too much, well, everywhere, especially on the forehead and cheeks and the chin and lips. Especially in the Western world, lips overfilling causes much more problem. And is that only for example, American Hollywood problem? No, I don't think so. We see in our country, in Asia, we sometimes see those cartoon-like photos. I'm sorry for those ladies. She will think that probably she's thinking that I'm pretty. That's bullshit. It's not pretty at all to my eyes. It's like a cartoon thing. It's not human looking. That's, I think, the disaster. And I am guilty for that because 10 years ago, when, for example, volumizing fillers like Azovitum Voluma, Responsive Q was on the market, I was saying that now it's time for the volume augmentation rather than treating the lines and folds, because it is kind of a aging-directed treatment. And that was right, but what actually matters was the degree. We have been injecting too much. So, according to a recent survey, actually is a survey result, and what's the patient's concern? Of course, a lot of things. It's a trustful doctor, number one. A second one, amazingly, is the natural results rather than the dramatic improvement. So people tend to say that, especially when they are coming to the dermatologist clinic, they say, oh doctor, the improvement should not be maximum. I want natural result. And I say, I will do it, but sometimes I fail. Like you too. Well, even though I'm trying to make it natural, sometimes it is not very easy because we don't know how to do it, basically. By instinct, we know it. By experience, we know it, but nobody actually classified or made a clear definition. What is the natural result? But probably we can say that keeping the universal notions of beauty, but treatment should be individualized, and the treatment result should not deform much of our pre-treatment facial features, and most of all, I think maintaining a subject's facial expression as good as possible is very important. So, we still remember that, for example, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, what is the ideal fillers? It should be last longer, cause no problem, will have a good, price, policy, and so on. And now, the plus alpha is that should be very natural in terms of a tissue incorporation, and, for example, resilience properties, which actually will be move just like our own tissue, and of course longer lasting, but if needed, should be erased very quickly, and of course immunologically very safe. That's the future direction, and the current filler products under development are all devoting to get those good properties compared to the old ones. It's a Greek or Roman sculpture, which is great, but interestingly, those Roman sculptures are all static faces. no facial expressions. I don't know why, but anyway, they made it in that fashion. But slight modification of the sculpture using Photoshop, for example, a little bit more dynamic lines, a little bit of a twitching of a eyelid shape, position, look more dynamic rather than static. Okay, it's a simple change. Conversely, with those type of a living face, making a little bit of a less dynamic result will make it look like a non-human. Although before and after static photos will be great, but in the real world, patients will not love it. That's a simple thing, right? But we forget it, especially when we are doing a speech in front of a public and showing before and after photos with static photos. To be honest, I'm the one. I know that the results, the patient was not very happy. But according to the before and after comparison photos, I find out that, to show those before and after photos during the meeting, the audience will say, wow. But in reality, some of those patients are not happy. For example, if I am supposed to speak specific products, if it is okay, for example, Sculptra, okay? Sculptra before and after photos are fantastic, but some patients suffer from the rigidness of the skin, facial tissue after serial injection of collagen stimulators. So the importance of a facial expression is very important because, for example, those facial expressions are innate. It's actually our instinct. For example, the left panels are congenitally blind people. Right one, they're close relatives. And their way of making facial expressions are interestingly very similar, although the blind people have not learned to take a look at their friends and family and, this is smile, this is frowning. No, they didn't. They really don't know, but by instinct they make those facial expressions. And as early as Charles Darwin actually knew that. For example, mother and daughter, very young, baby, with mother's neutral face. Well, actually, the baby is looking at her mother. With neutral mother face, baby poses a neutral face, and with big smile, baby smiles. Actually, our sons and daughters do it when they were babies. So that means it is our instinct, innate thing, very important. And interestingly, there was a genetics lecture in the morning session, and the way of making a facial expression, especially the smile, the genetic factors are very, very strong. Me and my son, having a very similar smile features. So it is a key element to distinguish a person or family or relative. So it is beyond beauty. It is kind of an identification thing. So we should not harm it by doing any type of a optional treatment like aesthetic things. Well, almost everybody here is Asian people, and we know that Caucasians have a more dynamic, more diverse, more variety of facial expressions than Koreans or Japanese, Chinese people. I don't know if it is genetic or epigenetic, but anyway, there are ethnic differences. Anyway, to make just one symbol stereotype of a facial expression, multiple parts of our facial components are involved. For example, with fear, at least 7 or 8 facial expression muscles are working together, like a smile, simple smile, but at least 12 muscles are involved in various ways. And we all know that there are so many types of smiles. Duchenne smile, closed lip smile, full smile, involuntary smile, and so on. Very dynamic, but the simple fact is that at least for smile expression, facial expression, The perioral area is the most dynamic and most important part. And for the facial landmarks, when we make facial expression like a smiling, facial landmark locations are changing. It's a two-dimensional thing. And interestingly, when we make a smile, our mid-face and periorbital vectors change, direction changes, and most importantly, the volume shift actually occurs when we make a smile or frowning. So it's a kind of a three-dimensional thing. But honestly, are we paying much attention when we are treating the filling the nasolabial fold with the volume changes of the mid-face? Honestly, no. We are just filling it. But after filling, patients, when they make a facial expression, the outcome can be different. What we see in our clinic rooms or photos. Usually, the smile makes the mid-face volume shifts upper lateral part, going like this vector. So when you evaluate your patient before doing the nasolabial fold injection, be very careful to take a look at the pre-existing baseline volume of the upper lateral cheek. Okay, I'm not going to tell you about the technical details, but to consider the adjacent area, especially the mid-facial volume, or just ignoring it makes a lot of differences in terms of a patient satisfaction. Facial palsy can be a dramatic, demonstration of how mid-face volume or vectors changes during our nasolabial fold movement. And again, the mid-cheek volume shift is very great, is very evident in the unaffected side. And usually, smiling and laughing causes more facial volume or shape deformation than the ordinary speaking situation. So in summary, facial expression, we have to think about the muscles and the volumes altogether. That's what I really want to put emphasis on. And again, the time, because facial expression is actually an animation rather than the still cut. Animation means it changes according to time, so it is actually four-dimensional. And we also have to think about the skin texture. Yeah, that's wrinkles and folds, but well, for example, the skin pores. Okay, skin pores, the distribution and the lining up of the skin pores actually changes with our facial expression. So simply put something in the nasolabial fold is not enough in many cases. If other maneuvers like thermage or chemical peels or skin booster injection on the surface of skin, if that can be threads whatsoever, combined to the traditional filling, that will be great. Okay, this actually is the end of the first part of my lecture. Now I'm gonna talk about more on the product itself. Yeah, it's a break animation. Yeah, interesting. Actually, those graphics are not on the medical textbooks. It's from the Hollywood computer graphic engineers or Blizzard, game programmers. They are really interested in the facial movements because they are actually making those facial three-dimensional expressions using the computers. So, Teosyal RHA product is a hyaluronic acid filler designed to support the skin in every move. Actually, that means it's a dynamic filler. the core slide to describe the characteristic of a RHA filler. Traditional fillers, including the older version of a Teosyal filler products, actually has a more rigid structure. So actually, it loses its natural viscoelastic properties of hyaluronic acid. But the newer product, like in this case, Teosyal RHA products lines, have a dynamic structure of hyaluronic acid inside, and it tends to maintain natural viscoelastic properties of our own hyaluronic acid chains. I'm not very good at the engineering thing, but according to my understanding, actually many factors like temperature, pressure, pH, hyaluronic acid concentration, and raw material molecular weight, mixing condition, reaction time altogether affect the final physical property of a filler product. And the company has several patents regarding the manufacturing of a more dynamic fillers like RHA. And this is very important part. Traditional fillers have a more short chains than long chains, but the RHA has a more long chains than short chains, and the content of BDDE has been reduced significantly, but more physiological bindings like physical entanglement or Van der Waals force kind of indirect bindings are abundant with the RHA product. So it's more like a naive natural hyaluronic acid in our skin, fat, tissue, subcutaneous fat, or in the dermis. The company is saying that by associating the strength and stretch concepts, dynamic rheology brings holistic, comprehensive responses to the gel behavior. Oh, what is strength and stretch? Is it different from elasticity and viscosity? A bit different, very confusing. But anyway, strength is a resistance to compression and repeated small stresses and going back. Stretch is a traction. The forces are different. It's basically an indicator of a gel malleability and adaptability, resilience in the non-linear viscoelastic region of the stress-strain diagram, which is actually a very complicated story to ordinary doctors. But anyway, just take a look at the short video for the explanation of what is stretch and what is a strength. It's a company provided video, by the way. For example, perioral area, if RHA filler is injected here and the injected filler material is exposed to the traction forces laterally and going back, and again stretch, and going back, that's stretch. And for example, in the mid-face areas, and pushing the face with the fist, like it's a compression, right? So to resist and recover upon compressive forces is called strength. Actually, it's not the scientific rheological terminology. It's a marketing terminology, but I think it's a well-made nomenclature to describe the behavior of fillers inside our living tissue. So what's the difference between elasticity and strength? Elasticity is actually is an indicator of a rigidity or stiffness. Basically, it is a gel with high G prime, high elasticity only, tends to resist well, but eventually the gel will break upon excessive force. A gel with high strength high strength is actually more specifically is the dynamic modulus G asterisk, and so it's an indicator of a resist but recover. So it's different. Okay, highly elastic fillers are different from a filler with a high strength. What about the stretch? Actually, this is a stress-strain curve, and usually the rheology meters, the machines measure the physical properties within this range. But in the real world, actually our facial expression like this causes more stress. It's more powerful than this. So those stimulation, those stresses belong to the non-linear viscoelastic region. So when we measure some behavior changes within those regions, we call it stretch. And there is a very scientific terms called creep deformation. Well, it's actually long-term high level of mechanical stresses given to the gel or viscoelastic material, and eventually those materials break down. And a filler with higher stretch will actually resist and recover even the stresses are high enough beyond the viscoelastic region. So it's very good for the treatment. For example, perioral lines, like a lot of movements over the forehead. So left side is a conventional HA filler. Right side, blue one, is a RHA filler for demonstration. And it goes like this. Very simple. The core marketing concept of RHA product is just like this, okay? Stretch and recover, not stretch and break down. More specifically, probably Restylane type of a biphasic particle type fillers will belong to the left side, and RHA or some other newer generation of fillers will be on the right side. When we compare Teosyal RHA products with some competitors, it has a very unique strength and strain, strength and stretch properties, and we see that RHA2 is more of a stretch, and RHA4 is more of a strength than stretch. Well, when I show this kind of a comparison graph, nobody is paying attention, right? Usually those type of graphs say, wow, it's great, yeah, we are better than Restylane, we are better than Juvederm. Well, that's true, but that's not my study. But I have to show this slide because I'm sponsored, doing a sponsored lecture. But anyway, it is interesting that even when, for example, Teosyal RHA4 is compared to the company's own older version of a product like a Teosyal Ultra Dip, which is a very elastic, very stiff filler, but the patient satisfaction and the maintenance, final quantification of the volume filling is better in the RHA4 rather than Ultra Dip. So RHA2 has a 23 milligram per cc concentration, and MOD means modification degree of modification, cross-linking degree, anyway, is only 3.1%, which is very low. So you can use it on the fine lines, especially on the perioral lines, or even on the forehead or globular lines, rather than the volumization. Of course, in Korea, I personally love Teosyal RHA2 product on the teardrop areas. Of course, you can use Teosyal Redensity 2, but RHA2 is another good one, especially when the patient has a very dynamic periocular movement. Facial expressions are great. RHA3 is in between product, and cross-linking degree is again 3.6%, very low. So maybe you can use it on exactly the same indication like RHA2, but if the patient's skin is a bit very thin, maybe you can prefer you can use RHA too. If your patient's skin is relatively thick, and if you're gonna inject a little bit deeper, then you will choose RHA3. Very versatile. Personally, I love to use this product on the nasolabial fold, superficial filling, and pre-zole areas here and here, and sunken cheeks, larger areas. Oh, let us talk about the perioral lines, not the nasolabial fold, but the perioral, so-called accordion lines here. Some patients have a very, very severe those type of lines, and it is surely related with actually not only the nasolabial fold, but also it is related with the platysma. And anatomically, platysma pars modiolaris muscle is responsible for that accordion lines. And this is actually my patient before and after photos. Nasolabial folds were filled with RHA3, and perioral lines were filled with RHA2. And nasolabial fold was injected using the cannula, and perioral lines were injected using the needles, the serial puncture technique. And after 1 week, actually, the treatment response is great. And what I was really surprised was that the lines were gone without any sacrifice of her normal facial expression. This is very important. Even though I'm not using the botulinum toxin, sometimes too much injection of hyaluronic acid actually damages the facial expression patterns. But for her, normal facial expression is well maintained, but the lines were gone. So that can be a perfect example how RHA products can be employed to your daily practice. RHA4 is more of a very high strength hyaluronic acid filler, and basically it is for the volumization. And in Korea, RHA4 has a good reputation on the augmentation of the forehead, and we all know that conventional fillers on the forehead sometimes cause lumps and bumps when the patients are contracting their frontalis or procerus or corrugator muscles. Okay, so that even with the fat, sometimes those irregularities actually matters. But with the use of RHA4 on the forehead with good technique, well, those kind of filler migration irregularities can be prevented in many ways. And the chin. Of course, we can use any type of fillers on the chin if the filler is very stiff. Even the radius, we love it. But you know what? Some patients have very strong mentalis movement and perioral movement, so sometimes we cause very pointed witchy chin or very unnatural chin after the filler injection. So if you think that those those phenomena can be of a great problem, then consider using RHA4 product for the chin, and that's good. And if you combine RHA2 or RHA3 on the pre-zole area with RHA4 on the chin, the end result will be great, perfect. So in summary, Teosyal RHA products, indications 2 and 3, nasolabial fold, oral commissure, Mariona lines, and the lips. Well, in Europe, they are using a lot of RHA2 or 3 products on the lips. RHA4, basically Caucasian people love to use it on the cheek augmentation. It's good, but in Korea, we are using the product primarily on the forehead. And the last slide. What should we build? Static before and after improvement photos for homepage showing? Yeah, we need, yeah. During the conference we need, but actually it's not very important. Actually what we need, what patients need is dynamic faces with natural aesthetics. No, facial animation, keep the facial animation. So we have to know the exact anatomy, static anatomy and the dynamic anatomy. Of course, we don't have much resources regarding the dynamic anatomy, but anyway, we have to understand the facial dynamism and of course, good technique. I'm not talking about the technique, but well, it's very important. And the product, well, every product has a good points and bad points. And I'm not saying that RHA is the perfect one, okay? But if you understand the property characteristic of a product and use it in a good way, in a good indication, your results will be great. But if you're using a wrong product in the wrong plane with wrong technique, then even with great products, you will actually make a disaster or bad results. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Rho, for your excellent presentation. Any question from the floor? Dr. Rho, because I want to reflect your last line. You say that not all filler is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
In case for the RHA,
Mm-hmm.
in your experience, which region of the face and which layer of the skin is the best use of the RHA?
Okay. Regarding RHA4, still the injection plane should be deep because it's basically a volumization or contouring type of filler, but it is more dynamic. So basically, RHA4 is for the deep injection. But for RHA2, for example, can be injected very superficial. Just below the dermis, it's okay. Even inside the dermis, even as long as you are not injecting it too superficially, it's okay. So think about, for example, RHA3 injected immediately subdermal. I mean, immediately below dermis. The junction between lower dermis and the subcutaneous fat, that will be perfect, okay? Without any lumps and bumps. And you know what? Well, a dynamic filler should behave in a right way, even though they are injected superficially. But please understand that when I say superficial injection, that does not mean epidermal injection. That's too superficial in most of the cases. Usually lower dermis or dermal subcujunction, when I say superficial, that's superficial. Mm-hmm.
So in case for the perioral injection, which product will we use?
Perioral.
Perioral.
Basically, when I say perioral, for example, perioral lines,
Yes.
RHA2 is a perfect one. But when I do the injection, for example, marionette lines, here, or lip corner support, I would rather use RHA3. For pre-zole injection here, actually it's a space filling rather than the line filling. So I would rather use RHA3 or 4. For lips, I don't know. Probably European doctors from Italy can tell me about what is the perfect product for the lips. Actually, I'm not a frequent lip injector.
Thank you. Some question from the floor.
Will you tell us where you inject the RHA2 so that we can learn something from you?
Okay. So actually, the tip for the accordion line injection is that at first, do the serial puncture just at the depression areas when patient is making a smile. And that's not enough, actually. That's not enough. And then find out some, after injection, right after injection of the dynamic lines, and for example, 10 minutes or 15 minutes after, and bring the patient back again and please let them make a facial expression again. And we clearly see some unfilled spots. And maybe we can inject there more superficially because that is the finishing of the procedure. And probably you can, if you can get it, please consider combine RHA1 product for the fine-tuning of the procedure. Unfortunately, in Korea, RHA1 is not approved, but I still think that is a great filler. And well, second thing is that although RHA2 product is very soft and have a very good dynamic features, but the importance of a immediate molding is very important. You know what? The RHA product is basically very resilient in nature. Resilient means stretch and going back, recovers very easily. So right after injection, if you don't mold it completely, sometimes that actually causes some lumps, not because of the bad technique, but because the fillers tend to maintain their original shape upon injection. So make the injection in a very regular way and meticulous way, and the injection with the glove, with the ointment, inside and outside like this is very important, I think.
Would the filler migrate after a few days when the patient does a lot of the facial expression?
So that's a good point of RHA product. Well, of course, RHA, even RHA filler can migrate, but the degree and the instance of a migration is far less. So please consider it. Although you are not RHA cannot do everything, but if you have that product in your office, maybe, and use it in the right way, that will actually make your practice much, I'll say, shine more. Okay.
Okay, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Wu. Can everyone join me to thank Dr. Wu for excellent presentation?